It's painful to say goodbye.
It's hard to say I miss you.
The time of love
Is a gruesome cruise.
I need you now, dear Lord.
Like a leak in the roof that causes dampness in the house, so are some childhood memories that we have. Today we have Sister Nomsa to talk about a certain childhood memory that she has and that has been a problem. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. People would love to know who we are talking to. Please share with us who Nomsa is.
My name is Nomsa, born Nomsa Mguni. I've got very fond memories of my childhood, but maybe before I go into that, currently I'm a mother of 4 sons, and professionally I'm a water treatment specialist, and I grew up here in Bulawayo, but I was born in Gwanda, Gwanda Hospital. That's where my mother comes from, in Gwanda. And then we lived in Gweru, where my father used to work. He used to work for the Butter Shoe Company as a relief manager at the time. Okay. So we moved around a little bit because of that. And then I grew up in Luveve for most of my childhood. Went to Mafagela Primary School there. I loved school. I think I was what one would call an A student. Okay. Yes, I love to sing. And in my childhood memories, really one of the things that I remember the best was seeing my parents' ballroom dancing in the house. Oh, wow. They used to love to dance, and me and my brother were the spectators. Okay. And we would be cheering them on. So I grew up loving country music as a result of that. Okay. And I don't know if there's anything else that I've left about myself. Maybe I'll say some more later on.
So yes. Among the country musicians that you loved, maybe you can just say 1 or 2 that you really loved because of your parents.
I'll probably mention 3. Kenny Rogers, Don Williams, and Dolly Parton. Those were my favorites.
All right. 2 males and one female.
Yes.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I'm wondering, from those beautiful memories that you have, there could be some things that you have carried into your current life that are important from the beautiful memories.
Oh yes, I mean I remember, I had a very close relationship with my parents. From the time that I was small, we used to talk a lot together. I remember episodes of sitting on my father's lap and playing drums on his stomach and singing and all that kind of stuff. So I carried that with me into my own family. I talk a lot with my children, and I believe it has made us to be very close to each other, and it has also helped us in many different ways. You know, life has got challenges and all that. So being able to communicate and talk to each other has made us go through those challenging times more smoother than we normally would have done.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe I can flip the coin and look at the other side of it. Now, in retrospect, when you're looking at children right now, whether they're teens or they're infants, what are your fears? What fears come to you?
Children being children, communicating with older people sometimes can be a challenge. Because as a child you are in awe of the grown-ups that you are around you, depending on the kind of relationship that you have. And what I'm really afraid of is that things can happen to children, and they may not be able to communicate or to articulate what it is that has gone wrong, and then they carry that with them, into their adulthood. But I also see that, everybody makes mistakes, irrespective of your age. And when children have made mistakes, are they able to have a fallback system that can support them, whether it's at church or it's at home, that can really make them feel that this is not the end of the world. I can deal with it. There's all sorts of different kinds of things that happen. Even some of them happen within the home. When you're reading the papers, you see that there are some things that are happening even within the home, and children are not able to talk about them. And it becomes a burden that they carry with them throughout their lives.
Okay. It seems you are seeing a gap that's existing between the communication between parents and children. And that's your greatest fear.
Yeah, very big one.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing the perspective that you have. We will stay tuned, and after the break, we'll hear more on this story. Welcome back to the second segment. I'm still with Sister Nomsa, and she's been talking about a very important element on the fear that she has. So I'm wondering where it is actually coming from, because you have this fear about children not being able to communicate with their parents even when bad things have happened. So where is it coming from?
Yeah, it comes from a personal childhood experience that I had. Because, at 12, my parents, strangely, besides, the lovely childhood that I talked about, they divorced when I was 12. And then I was now living with my dad and my stepmom. It wasn't as rosy as, it was before. And one afternoon, I left home. It wasn't an afternoon, it was actually a weekend, a Saturday morning. And
maybe just to interject,
yes.
You spoke about it not being rosy. Could there be a change between the times when you were able to communicate, or maybe there were times when you were able to communicate and there were times when you are not able to communicate, comparing the two situations before the divorce and after the divorce?
Yes, it became very difficult to communicate with my parents then, because now it was my dad and my stepmom. And the way that I went to live with my dad, I was at boarding school. When my parents divorced, I was living with my mom. After he had paid lobola to my uncle's place, he just came and picked me up from boarding school without even saying goodbye to my mother. And, going to live with this other mother that I didn't know much about. The conditions of living were very different. The way that we talked to each other had changed dramatically. And a lot of things that I used to take for granted in terms of communicating with my dad were no longer accessible, because I could talk to him anytime. But now, when I was talking to him, it would look as if maybe there's some conspiracy of some sort that you're up to. You know what it's like with step relationships and all that. So I think that was an impediment that really affected me.
So that must have done something in you. And what could that be?
It caused me not to be as open as I would have been had things not changed. But also, I think what I'm going to be sharing with you was also a very traumatic experience. So sometimes I wouldn't know whether to assign that to the relationship that I had, the change in dynamics of the relationships with my parents, or to the trauma of what I experienced. Because sometimes something can be so traumatic that you can't even say, in Ndebele bathi ukukhulwa kula mkhosi. And I think they know what they are talking about. Yes.
Okay. Yes. So when I interjected, you were talking about there's this afternoon that you decided to do something, and maybe you wanted to talk about that, and I interjected.
Yes, yeah. In the dynamics of what happened, I would sneak out to go and visit my mom. And because of her economic situation as well and what was going on in her life then, she was supplementing her income by running a tavern at her home. So I met this person. I didn't even know really that there could be a relationship between us. But being a young person, you are attracted. They say men in uniform are dashing. So this guy was in an army uniform, and I was really drawn and attracted to him. We started talking, and he asked me for a date. We made arrangements that the following Saturday he was going to take me for a movie. So I agreed to that. I was supposed to go for a tennis match at school. I used to play tennis. And I told my friend to cover for me. I was going to go for a movie. So I went for that movie, but the movie never materialized because the guy actually said he had forgotten his wallet at home. So I said, okay, let's go pick up your wallet and then we come back for the movie. But he took me to a friend's house, and when we got there, it was very strange because it was just the two of us. He unlocked the house, and I'm like, is this where you live? He says, no, this is my friend's house. So what are you doing at your friend's house since you forgot your wallet at home? And then he had another agenda on his, he raped me, and it was very traumatic. I didn't even know what to do. After that, I was like, I left home, okay. Now this is what has happened to me. How do I even process this? And picking up the pieces after that was not an easy process at all. Because when I eventually got back home, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even know where to start. First of all, I had bunked, the school activity. So I was feeling guilty about that. I was thinking to myself, when I start telling them this, how am I even going to say what was I doing there? How did I get there in the first place? So I blamed myself for a lot of things. I was like, so is this how God punishes children who make mistakes? I also was like, if this is how God deals with young children who make mistakes, then it's very tough. So I kept it to myself.
So this was a criminal offense, and you kept it to yourself.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it wasn't an easy journey because how do you even start to process something like that as a 16-year-old and all by yourself? And I would always ask myself, should I say anything? And if I say something, like I'm saying, the relations between me and my stepmom were not as good as they were supposed as they should have been. And my mom was far away. I thought, should I write a letter to her and tell her what happened? I thought she was going to be hurt again because I met this person. So I was always making excuses for... It was my burden, it was my problem, it was my challenge. So that's why, even as I was talking about my fears about communication for children, that if something happens to a child, it should be easy for them to come and talk to a parent. But for me, I don't know how and why it was that difficult. And I didn't even grieve over it. I looked at it. I had done some biology at school. I said, okay, when things like this happen, girls fall pregnant. Am I pregnant now? I was stressed for that whole month, and I was thinking. And then when I realized, no, I wasn't, then I said, okay, now let's pick up the pieces, pull yourself together, and get on with life. So that's how I decided to handle it.
It sounds like you had a myriad of problems that were emanating from that. Besides the issue of guilt, what could be the other things that came from that experience?
Even as you're interacting with your peers, there are conversations that you have. And now when you're talking about marriage, and you're talking about the kind of men that you would love to marry, all those kind of things, and you're like, should I even participate in these conversations? Because I have nothing to say anymore. So right from there, one starts, I started to just put labels on myself to say, on this one, I don't qualify. On that one, I don't qualify. So I would disqualify myself from a lot of things. And I carried that. You see, the dichotomy or the dilemma of it was that at school I was still excelling. And why I was excelling at school, I told myself, the only way to get myself out of this is to get a good education, be able to get a good job and look after myself. And everything else, if it falls into place, it will fall into place. If it doesn't, it won't. So that's the journey that I went. It was very lonely because, carrying something like that all by yourself, wishing you could talk about it to somebody else, but you can't. Having family, I had cousins. They loved me. I knew that. But for some reason, I just couldn't get myself to talk about this to anybody.
Now, losing virginity out of choice is something else, but losing virginity, losing it maybe out of rape, must be so devastating. I'm wondering how you processed that loss.
I don't think I ever... You see, one of the things that I decided to do, I said to myself, let me just put it behind me and forget about it. So I really never dwelt on it. I decided to just blot it out of... To tell you the truth, even the name of the person, I deleted it from my mind. I said, that is how I'm going to deal with it. I will act as if nothing happened. And but then later on in life, in retrospect now, I see that, okay, so that was how I didn't deal with it face on, but in my subconscious, it was lingering. So that pain was always there.
So this must have built some perspective on men. As growing up as a young person, what was your perspective on maleness and manhood?
I think that there are two things that affected my perspective. I said to myself, with my financial independence and my education, even if I marry somebody who doesn't care or who doesn't love me, it doesn't matter because I'll take care of myself. So to me, men were, what can I say? They were just there. They were a utility just for me to be Mrs. So-and-so, just for me to have children because I loved children. And I think the other thing also that affected my perspective towards men was the transition also in terms of my parents divorcing as well. That and I looked at what happened to my mother, even after, for her to even end up running a tavern and all that kind of stuff. I saw the way men were treating her, and I was like, men are just there. And you don't have to... I really didn't believe, after that, I didn't believe that it was possible for somebody to really love someone and be happy.
Be happy.
Yeah.
There should be some cultural issues that you were battling with, although you didn't really come out in the open as a child, maybe in the religious perspective, in the religious circles, and also cultural issues. What could those be that made your coping very difficult?
Yeah, I mean, there's an incident that happened when I was in Form 3. Wow. And that incident really, it made me realize that, life can take a sudden turn and things become very difficult for one to process. Because as you know, as you're growing up as a teenager, boys have an attention towards you. So this young man who was... he was working now with the Telecommunications Corporation. he would pass around my place and wanting to. And for me, I was like, you know what, I'm done with men. But anyway, he was interested in me. And my dad one day found us talking to each other by the corner of the street. And he chased him away, confiscated his bike. It was drama. And what happened after that really traumatized me even further and made me to concretize that I'm not going to talk about what happened to me ever to anyone.
Thank you very much for sharing this bit of the story. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to the show, Painful Goodbyes. This is the third and final segment. Thank you for being with us. Now, I'm wondering how you've come to this place where you're able to talk about this. What steps did you take?
Yeah, I've had to come to terms with the what happened to me, because most of the time I used to blame my relationship with my stepmom, that maybe that's what had been causing. There have been challenges that I'd been facing in my own personal life. And it came to a point where I had to ask God, why is this happening to me? Why am I in this situation where I'm finding myself not able to sort out simple things? I'm an educated woman. I've got everything going for me, but for some reason I can't go into the details because of time, of the challenges that I was facing at a personal level. But because of those challenges, I've had to look myself in the mirror, and one of the things that surfaced was the fact that I had not dealt with the pain that I had put away. As I said, that I just decided that, you know what, I will carry on with my life as if nothing happened. But at the back of my mind, my subconscious was always telling me there's something wrong. And in my relationships, in my marriage, a lot of things were just going wrong because of that. So I had to come face to face with who I was, what had happened to me, and deal with it as somebody who wants to get healed of that pain.
So I don't know how much time it took, but I guess it should be a long time. What could have accelerated your healing and maybe your confronting this situation?
Yes, because what I realized, I've always considered myself a prayerful person. And I would pray about all the things that were not going right in my life. But all the time, I was always looking for the wrong people, the wrong things that people have done. And that's what I was constantly praying about, until I realized that I'm not moving, I'm not going anywhere. And one day I remember in my prayers, I said, God, what is wrong with me? I can't understand myself anymore, because I've been praying for all these years about the same thing and I'm rolling in one place. And one epiphany that came to me, it's like God actually spoke to me and said, you know what? You want me to heal you, but you are talking about other people and what they have done to you. It's like you going to a hospital after being in a car accident and you come and describe the driver of the car. You come and describe what the car looked like. That is not what the problem is. I need you and I to talk to each other. And that's when my conversations with God and my prayers changed dramatically.
So childhood trauma becomes accelerated because of silence.
Yes.
What would you say to parents?
Open your eyes. When your child starts changing behaviors, definitely sit down with them in a non-threatening way and find out what is going on. Because there were delinquent behaviors that I showed to my parents as a way of trying to get their attention. But instead, all that was happening was further reprimands and more reprimands, as opposed to saying, why is this child behaving like this? With all this knowledge now that I have, whenever a child does crazy things in my home, I always make time to sit down with them and find out what is wrong. And I wish parents would take that kind of paradigm to say, when a child is misbehaving, many a times we'll say that delinquent child, but we don't get to the bottom of what is it that is causing them to do that.
And maybe the church as well.
Definitely the church, because I remember I could have finished my Pathfinders and done my master guides and everything, but because of what was happening at home and the behavior that I was starting to show, which was just uncharacteristic of a child, of a church-going girl, a lot of parents were telling their children not to play with me. No, that one, just leave her alone. I wasn't a problem child as such, but somehow it was showing that I was now antisocial. And being antisocial, a lot of parents just labeled me that, that girl, just let her be. Don't be friends with her. And you find that many a times, you also look at the church and the way that we conduct ourselves and how we relate with each other. It's in this sanitized environment that doesn't talk about real life issues. Many a times we are talking about the misbehavior as opposed to coming to terms with the things that cause the misbehavior.
And now, there could be a young person that has gone through what you are going through, or maybe that has lost virginity due to a voluntary thing, maybe decision. What would be your words to that individual? Or this one has been raped, or this one just did it voluntarily?
Really, bottom line is that it comes down to the same thing. We all regret our mistakes, whether they were done by other people on us or they were done by us through our choices. But what is important is value yourself and know that that mistake does not define you. Because once you allow the mistake to define you, then the rest of your life is going to walk, is going to be tainted by that definition that you have of yourself. But if you tell yourself, everything that I have done, God says we can deal with it. And He loves us so much that He's interested in every little bit. And tell somebody, even if whether it was voluntary or involuntary, talk to somebody about your dilemma so that you don't settle for, something that will not make you happy. Settling for a relationship that you know that this is not the relationship that has been ordained for me by God.
Thank you very much for sharing your story, and thank you for being vulnerable and showing courage about talking about a very stigma-littered issue. And thinking that it is very important for someone who is going through what you are going through, what you went through, to seek for professional counseling.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you very much. For me, Skumbuzo Duve, and Nomsa, and the crew behind the scenes, it's a wrap.